Today we're talking about 3 very high-end in-ear headphones from 3 different companies. 2 of them are considered the flagship of the company. The other one is just one of the many high-end models that they make. And they're all very, very different. So we're gonna be taking kind of a first impressions / first look at them. I'm just gonna be going over some of the build, some basic sound stuff, but not really anything in depth. And then they'll all have their own individual reviews. So definitely look forward to those. So these are the Meze Rai Penta. Penta standing, of course, for 5 because there's 5 drivers, which we'll talk about in a second. But Rai, a term I'd never heard of before, spelled R-A-I, is a style of music fusing Arabic and Algerian folk music with Western rock. Okay, don't know what that is. I might have to look it up after this, but they've got an aluminum chassis with this really dark blue outside kind of exterior color. It's beautiful. I actually really like the design of these, but they're pretty lightweight. Like they don't feel that heavy. They don't really feel like metal, but of course they are. So you've got the reliability and the strength of metal, but kind of the lighter weight nature of like a plastic in-ear. It feels quite nice. Now the 5 drivers that are in here, they actually use 4 balanced armature drivers to handle kind of the mid-range and the top ranges of the frequency response and different crossovers at different points. And then they have a bigger dynamic driver that will handle mostly the low end. So they're using what they call a Penta hybrid system, but it's basically just a typical hybrid system that just happens to feature 5 drivers. And the price point for the Meze Penta is about $1,100. So it's definitely not cheap, but about half the price as the next headphone that we're going to be talking about, which are these. And these are the Dita Dream XLS headphones. And these headphones take a very different build methodology to it. They have a completely different driver structure. Similar to what basically my favorite in-ear at this point, the A8000 from Final. These have a single dynamic driver similar to that. And in fact, they even mentioned that in their email over to me. And I'm personally very curious how these 2 top-end dynamic drivers compare to one another. This one features it's definitely a more flashy appearance. The Meze is more understated. It's kind of more sleeker, a little bit more modern in my opinion. And of course, you've got that trident on the outside that kind of showcases it's a Meze product. This one comes with Dita's symbol, and it's a little bit more kind of flashy, right? It's got the gold accents, but it's a titanium chassis. Doesn't feel super heavy, but it does feel quite solid, but not over the top or anything like that. Now, one aspect of the build I'm not totally in love with here is the cable connects. They're kind of this frosted white, and they throw off the really good looking titanium from the regular chassis. I just wish it was, I don't know, a little bit darker or blended a little bit better in some way, but it stands out a little bit. Now the unboxings between these 2, and I'll explain more about why I'm not talking about the other final product yet. The unboxings between these 2 are quite different. Now your Meze is pretty much just standard affair. It's just a box, you open it, you see your ear tips and you see your headphone case, and that's it. The Dita is a little bit more luxurious. It's got the gold accents everywhere. And then it comes with a soft case, a hard case, a myriad of tips. Then they have a variety of right-angled connector types, which they use for this. And this is a right-angled disconnectable tip for the one and only cable that it does come with. Now this system they call the Awesome cable, and it basically unscrews. It's unfortunately partially made of metal and partially made of plastic. It feels a little bit cheap. Like for 2,000 bucks, it doesn't feel as nice as I would have expected, but it seems to work pretty well. And you disconnect this currently 3.5 millimeter into basically a 4-pin system on here. And you can put either a 4.4 TRRRS connector on there, which is a slightly bigger looking one, or you can put the 2.5 balance cable that is pretty typical with high-end IEMs. And I actually kind of like this system. I wish it was implemented a little bit better with slightly better build materials given the cost. But it's not a bad system and it seems to work well. And in my testing so far, it seems to be pretty reliable. And then this cable is braided on the inside, but coated on the outside with almost like a slightly rubberized feeling kind of silicone or plastic or whatever they're using on the outside of this. It's slightly grippy. I actually kind of like this cable except for kind of the frosted tips near the end. And then to close out the unboxing experience, it actually comes with this metal warranty card. And funny note on those metal warranty cards. So my very first job when I was like 16 years old, something like that, 15, 16, I worked at Starbucks. And I never knew this. I've never seen anybody till this day. I only saw one customer with it when I was working there. But apparently, if you buy enough coffee for enough years, I don't know, how much coffee you have to buy, but it was a lot. I remember asking him about it, and he was explaining this absorbent amount of money he has spent at this establishment. They actually send you a metal credit card that's a Starbucks specific card, and it links to your regular credit card. It's kind of just like a showy thing. Like, it doesn't really mean anything or get you anything better. You don't get any discounts on coffee. It was just this metal card. It was kind of like this though. I always thought it was cool. Didn't really amount to anything, but anyways, there it is. Some little Josh lore for you. Okay, and then you have probably the weirdest in-ear headphone I think I've looked at. Even weirder than those Odyssey iSign headphones that have this giant planar. Like, that is out of the box thinking, and this is out of the box thinking too. So these are made of a copper housing, and regarding the looks, build-wise, they're very beautiful. Looks-wise, they look a bit pluggish, if you get what I'm saying. Whatever. But like, they're undeniably made impeccably well. They're made with copper, and you're gonna need it because those of you who have a keen eye will notice that there's no ear tips on here, and this little lip here looks quite large. And that's because with these particular headphones, you do not use ear tips. They pretty much sit cold in your ear. Now you can like stick them in your hand and heat them up a little bit before, and I would definitely recommend that. Now these are called the Piano Forte X's or 10s from Final, and they're $2,200. They're actually higher priced than the $8,000, but I don't think that they consider them their flagship because they're not available in all markets. Like, this is not something that you can actually go and find on Google. Unfortunately, you do have to kind of slither your way into some marketplaces that will actually sell these. And Final was kind enough to send me, I believe, what is either an engineering unit or a developer unit, or maybe a staff unit, because it didn't come with the box. No box, no parts. It just came with this in a little bag. And what you see in this quote unquote unboxing is basically all I got with it. So the actual buds themselves are quite noticeably like solid and heavy and kind of big, actually, size comparison. These are quite hefty. And then you've got this braided, super thin cable. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, and I just got these today, so I haven't really spent any time with them at all, except for just kind of sticking in my ear for about, I don't know, 25 minutes. I can't speak on how they feel after an extended listening time, but once you get over the coldness of it and it kind of heats up to body temperature and you're standing, they're kind of loose. They're definitely looser than, you know, a good sealed in-ear, but they're very comfortable, like more comfortable than anything that I actually have a seal with. Like any IEM I've ever tried, this is more comfortable despite being both bigger and heavier, but they kind of just rest in your ear. Now I can't speak on how it's going to be for everybody else, but at least in my ear, I can shake my head. I don't worry about these falling out at all. That's despite them not being super pressed into my ear. They're just kind of there. So for my ear, it's almost like they're custom tailored for my ear, honestly. But the weird part about this is that these headphones are not, I don't think this is a design intention necessarily, but probably something that they came to terms with early on. This headphone has no bass. And it's important to note that it's not intended to have any bass either. It's a very open headphone. There is no seal whatsoever. You can force a seal if you kind of, you know, stick it in your ear and plug it in your ear really hard. But if you're just putting them on naturally, they're not designed to be used with a seal. And because of that, they're pretty bass light, and you definitely notice that. I have to listen more, but I think the point of them is going to be kind of this open soundstage, which they do soundstage quite well. In fact, so well, I listened to the song from this Nightfall album I've been listening to. It's like this really well-recorded string instruments. But the first song I played from that album, I've been listening to that song all day with this Penta Rise and the XLS, and then I put the Fortes on, and that instrument is in a completely different place. Like it went from kind of being like off center to just being whoosh, like way out there, like not even in the same degree. Now I had to kind of analyze whether or not that's a good thing, and that's part of my responsibility in the reviews, but it's certainly very cool to see the difference at a minimum. I have to do more testing, but the Fortes are kind of odd. They're really odd. Like they don't exactly sound right. Of course, they've had zero burn-in, and I've just been listening to two very specific headphones all day long. So going, into a very different type of headphone is going to be a little bit of a system shock. So that's perhaps part of the issue. But they're very, very odd nonetheless. Now, none of these are dedicated in-ear monitors. None of them mention being a monitor. I do not recommend them for monitors. They do not have a monitor type sound, but they do all sound drastically different. Definitely that Forte. It doesn't really sound, it almost doesn't sound like any in-ear headphone. Like it almost sounds like a mix between full-size headphones and in-ear, and like a real mixture of that. Not like, oh, this sounds like headphones. Not like that. It sounds like a legitimate mixture, and I think it's just because of the distance of the driver. It's further out than most. Things that I picked up on each of these earbuds. The Dream XLS's bass response is awesome. In the review, I want to talk more thoroughly about this and kind of figure out the words I want to use to describe this. But the bass response seems like a speaker's bass, like a really good fast speaker, not like the distance. I'm not perceiving it as if it's coming from a really far away source, not like that, but it's got the speed of a good speaker. It's very odd. And it actually does remind me quite a bit of the A8000's bass response. It's not the amount necessarily, it's not and the XLS is not even a particularly bassy headphone either. It's just the quality of it and the feel of the bass response. I'll have a more thorough explanation, I hope, by the time the full review comes out. And then the Penta Rise, the most standout feature is actually the type of sound signature that they chose to go with, because Meze for me is a company that where if I got a random product for them, I'd pretty much bet my money that it's going to be a bassy product. Their 99 Classics are very bassy. A lot of their in-ears are pretty bassy. And even their flagship, their Empyrean is a very bassy headphone. It's got a lot of other good features, but it's definitely got a lot of bass, and that's one of the more prominent features about it. And this is not like that. This is a very different Meze product, and it's very intriguing. It's almost got more of a flat analytical approach to things, but not overly technical. It's not a hyper technical treble machine or anything like that. It actually feels quite well tempered in every single region. But it's almost missing like a little bit of a fun factor that some of the other Meze products have. I want to break all of these in more before I kind of come at this saying that this is kind of my final interpretations of the sound, obviously. But as of right now, the Meze is not exactly what I had expected. I think I had expected a little bit more low, and I'm not quite getting it from it. I don't know necessarily if that's a bad thing here. I want to analyze the other aspects of it that are some of them are just okay, and some of them are very impressive. Same thing with the Dream. It's got very impressive things and some things that are just kind of okay. And then the Forte, my mind is still a little bit scrambled by what exactly the headphone's doing, because it's very odd, and I'm not sure if I love it or if I hate it. It'll probably depend on the song, but that's it for now, guys. So please leave your questions, and hopefully by the time I get to these reviews, I will be, I think, rolling out probably one IEM review a week. So it's going to be a couple weeks. So I actually have a lot more IEMs than just these that I'm going to be reviewing. These are just kind of the top picks that I thought were the most interesting that I wanted to bring up in a separate video, and then we'll get to reviewing kind of on a really pretty consistent regular schedule in the coming days and weeks. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully you guys are staying safe. Wash your hands, do what you can to help everybody else doing what they can to help. So I appreciate it. Until the next video, my name is Josh, signing off.